Winning Place Podcast is back, and oh my God, Chris Forsberg, do I see a season ahead?
Oh boy,
is training camp?
It's a little too close. It's the rearview mirror. Objects may appear closer than they really are, but no, it is steamrolling towards us. 11 days till training camp. 16 days till like a preseason game, like a random 1:00 Sunday with the Hornets, and like 32 days until actual basketball. Goodbye abbreviated off season.
And so it was a longer off season than usual, but it just didn't feel like that.
Nope.
Because of the Durant stuff, I feel like, because that was a good month and a half there.
The team went to the finals. Normally we're like kind of, I mean, not that we ever kind of kick back in mid-May, but when you get bounced in the second round, you get an extra month of, kind of digesting. And it felt like we went right from finals to Brogdon and Gallinari to Durant rumors to it's been
Melo
nonstop.
rumors.
No rumors. Like, actually, it's weird. The last few weeks have been almost alarmingly quiet. I keep apologizing to people I work for because I'm like, it's just too quiet. But yeah, it's like everybody just knew that the season was coming, and so it's been a little bit quieter than normal. But that's all right. That's gonna change in 11 days.
It is, and it's going to be a fun training camp in terms of intrigue, I think, since there's a lot that's certain about this team in terms of the top 8-9 players in this rotation. But after that, there's a whole lot of uncertainty. And I thought you kind of broke this down nicely on NBC Sports Boston this week with a great rendition of the, I guess,
I went B-Rob. I took the power
it's good. No, it's good. It's like I was going to do I probably was going to bring out the full team power rankings at some point, but no, you got right to the point of what people are going to hear, bringing the back half of the roster training camp. This is guys playing for their lives.
Really?
Rankings with literally playing for not just a spot on the team, but potentially real minutes on this team.
So it's weird, right? Like the Celtics we just sort of feel like the whole team's coming back because they have their top 8. They've added Brogdon, but as part of that Brogdon trade, they really cleared out the end of their roster. And now there's 3 open spots. I don't suspect they'll fill them all, but they do have to fill 2 of them. And I know everyone's sort of been clamoring the last few weeks, like, oh, will they go get a Carmelo type, or should they look into Dwight Howard, an experienced center? But it's been clear. I feel like the vibes out of the Auerbach Center for the past month have been, you know what? Like, we've spent a lot of money, $19 million over the tax line already. I think they want to see what they've got. So they're going to bring in, and I think it's sort of by design. One of the stories I wrote that I really haven't even put out there yet, but like for me, the Celtics, they keep trading these first round picks, right? And so how do you get young talent in? You go get a bunch of former first round picks and hope that they fit better with your system and that you can develop them. And so from, Kabengele to all the way down to Denzel Valentine, and with Noah Vonleh and everyone else in between, they're just bringing in all these guys who just sort of haven't found their role or have fallen out of the league a little bit for whatever reason, for a variety of reasons. But just like you said, for me, I almost don't care about the first 10 guys on the roster, 9 guys on the roster. But like those third team workouts are going to be amazing because all of those guys have motivation to try to fill one of those 2 spots or however it shakes out.
And I mean, I would think too, in Ime Udoka's year 2 here, and knowing what he has with those guys, like he puts a lot of the starters and main event, like they're going to play they'll play a real game or 2 out of the preseason, but the rest of this, I would think for a lot of certainly the second half of these games is going to be primarily third team guys, because I think it's one thing. It's like, okay, we're figuring out who's going to be the 14th or 15th guy in the roster, and they're never going to play now. But it's like, no, this is Al Horford and Rob Williams are going to need nights off.
Yeah.
You would hopefully want to give other veterans on this roster nights off, period. And so you need to figure out who you want on your team for that and who you can trust. And so, I mean, you get a lot of that in practice reps, but I think in these games too, like that, giving some extended run for these guys will help you uncover the next, Javonte Green or whatever,
right.
whoever's going to jump out like that.
And that's why I'm like just super intrigued. Like normally I wouldn't care about these spots, and it's true. Like after training camp, you probably cross your fingers and hope you don't see a lot of these guys, because if you do, that means either you're giving rest to guys or you've been forced to use that depth because of injuries. But you have to be able to at least have the confidence to lean on those players. And I think one of the things coming off the finals is, okay, like Grant, Derek, and that crew went cold. Like, who are you leaning on? And as much as I thought Gallinari had weaknesses, at least you knew you could throw him in. So Gallo's out. There is positions at that front court spots. Like, who can confidently earn those minutes and earn your trust? And we're going to find out quick. So, like whether it's someone in that camp roster or, what they've got in-house in Cornette and Cabangeli. And, but like, I am fascinated to kind of watch this, and those guys should have no lack of motivation. You want to be on the parent roster, go out there and show that you can play 10 minutes, that you can take the baton if Al Horford sits on the second night of a back-to-back. And so, I think it's gonna be fun.
All right. So let's look at this. Now, I'm not going to blow your whole list. You have to go check out NBC Sports Boston.
I mean, you can.
I can. We might do it anyway, but I'm not going to do it out of the gate. So I'm gonna pick out names I want to talk about here because I'm intrigued by where they are in this list. And let's start with an obvious one. I think the guy most impacted here by the Gallinari injury is Sam Hauser.
Yeah.
And this is someone who was given a guaranteed deal at the beginning of the summer, which isn't like a shock, but also is like, okay, they didn't have to do that. That was a clear investment from a team perspective. And the question, I mean, he's shot well from three in the G League. He shot well from three in garbage time minutes.
Don't say Summer League, because
not in Summer League. And not only played a game. They saw enough after one game of Summer League. It was like, all right, let's pull the plug on this. Sorry, Matt Ryan. But now, right. So yeah, we'll get to him later maybe. But Sam Hauser, are you buying in on him being better than Carmelo and whatever free agent X that it could be out there for this team to fill that, Gallinari semi-role?
So I don't mind giving him first crack. It goes back to my whole thing about if you're going to have this highly expensive top 7-8, like you got to find cheaper young talent that can stay in the system. And sure, you can go sign a Carmelo. What's the long-term return on that? You get 1 year, you've got to play him. You can't cut him during the season. Like there's prickly parts of bringing in a veteran that complicate that path. Whereas with Hauser, if you do strike gold, like one of the things I keep going back to is in February, after they made the Derek White deal, I got to do an interview with Brad for our network. And he sort of said, one thing we need to do is identify young talent that might have a chance to blossom in the right situation. And he pointed to Miami. And, with Hauser, we kept saying it, like a Duncan Robinson possibility, right? A late round guy that, has one obvious skill set. And now, can he do enough to not be counterproductive in other ways, especially when this team wants to play a certain way with defense and ball moving on offense? So he's going to have to show me a little something. I think he has to show he can do more than just hit open threes on offense. But if he does just hit open threes, like there's a role for him. And so I do think that he gets first crack here. And unless he's a liability defensively and just gives you nothing else on offense, and teams just identify that like all he can do is catch and shoot, then yeah, like you can explore the route of like what's a better upgrade for that spot. I'd feel a lot better if we saw a little bit more in Summer League and he was like dominant, but yeah, like you said, all we saw was one kind of rough game. And so I think they're just crossing fingers on what they saw behind the scenes. And, maybe he could have played a little bit more towards the end of last season, but even into the playoffs, he gets hurt and that freak accident after practice or whatever it was. And so, yeah, it's just like, but I feel comfortable if he's your 10th guy. The only concern is that because he plays a position of higher need than maybe your 9th guy, like Peyton Pritchard if he was 6'8", would be playing a ton. Right. He's not. And so now they need guys like Hauser to fill that role. Are you comfortable with the Hauser in that role?
I think so.
The Hauser.
The Hauser. Yeah. I mean, that could stick. I think it's a situation where if he's hitting threes, yes, it all comes down if you like, cause the rest of his game, it's like all you need in that, you need 10 minutes of a guy who can space the floor. And Gallinari could give you, as you talked about, like more than that offensively. But it's a pretty good chance Hauser would be better defensively than Gallinari at this stage of his career. Like we haven't seen it yet, but that wouldn't be a huge surprise if he can. Gallinari's got more size, but from a foot speed perspective, would get picked on endlessly in like, situations that matter, which is why you probably wouldn't see him out there in crunch time a lot. Sure. But yeah, so I mean, like, it's until proven otherwise, I'm buying it. I mean, like you said, Summer League would have been nice to get an extended run and be like, okay, he's ready to pick it up here, but that's maybe not even the right place for him either. It's like, I'd rather see him next to 3 or 4 other guys that can draw defenses rather than a bunch of guys.
And that's the big thing, right? Like, he's going to be out there at times with Tatum and Brown and like really good lineups that if you're a defense, you're like, let him shoot. And then he can send those majestic rainbows at the rim, and we'll see if he can consistently hit it. But yeah, if he's like a 37% shooter from 3-point range, he'll thrive and he'll be fine and he'll eat those minutes as necessary. I mean, I'm intrigued on those, like the nights, like you said, if Al Horford isn't out there and you do need to lean a little bit harder into guys at the 4-5, other guys that we'll get into, is Hauser a guy that can give you like 20 minutes, 25 minutes and hold up and not be a defensive liability? And so, those are questions you probably can't answer until you get into the season.
First, we're going to hear from our sponsor here, LinkedIn Talent Solutions, where as you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire in all cylinders. And LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. I know personally, I've been on LinkedIn for years. It has helped lead to a couple of jobs over the years, and I've been able to connect with and network with tons of people on there over time. So it's a great place to get set up on. So you can create a free job post on there in minutes to reach your network and beyond on the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. So you can add your job and the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so your network can help you find the right people to hire on there. It's simple tools. You can use screening questions, make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So here's what you can do. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find candidates you want to talk to. Nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn every week. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/winning. That's linkedin.com/winning to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. I next want to move up to a really intriguing placement of the two-way guys on your list. High on the power rankings list.
You're going to skip Luke? We're not going to do a Luke talk?
I guess we should do Luke talk too. Yeah.
So let's just do. Can I just do a quick?
No, give me Luke. Give me.
So I was just surprised. So when I was putting these together, obviously, like I try to be somewhat informed. I think they're really bullish on Luke inside the Auerbach Center, and I think if you're like a casual fan, you're sitting there going, "Oh man, like if Al rests or if Robb gets injured, you're leaning on Luke Cornett to be your third big." And like I think about last year, and I mean, Ennis Freedom filled that role, and I mean, you got away with it. Now, like Tice came back and he wasn't great, but like you could fill those minutes. I'm not saying that I think Luke Cornett is going to be some world beater or whatever, but I think in 2 seasons he showed like both sides of the court kind of fits into what they do and can be okay. He's not going to be great at anything, but he'll be a willing ball mover. He'll set screens. He's the biggest dude they have. And so I've heard a lot of trepidation from fans about the big man spot. And like, look, that's absolutely fair because of Al's age and Robb's injury history. There might come a time that you have to address it more than what we see, but I just don't think right now it needs to be like the #1 priority. It's maybe sometime, get into the season and the names that are going to be out there to probably bolster that front court will be better. So yeah, I'm a little bit team Cornett. I feel like when he's been thrown in there, he's done okay. And he's
game in Toronto last year. That game in Toronto, he was like feasting on the boards.
Exactly.
Everyone else had the night off. Yeah, it's a good. They are very high on him, and they actually gave him he's the one guy out of this list that has like a real guarantee to his contract, which again is a sign of being like, we want you here. We think you have a really good shot of doing this. Yeah, if it would have to be, I think like a disastrous camp for him to like not make even that disastrous camp might like they might like him enough to keep him anyway. He just might not be the first man out as far as PT goes. But yeah, it's just his odyssey here is hilarious to me because when they got him initially in the Tice, all those deals that they made 2 years ago, he seemed like easily going to be the guy that was going to be waived when they needed a roster spot.
Right.
But he came in that game in Oklahoma City and like won him that game and was like, okay, Mo Wagner kind of has stunk for the last week here. So guess what? Luke, you're staying. And now, lo and behold, he obviously he's bounced around a little bit last year, but they signed him to the deal once the roster spot opened up.
Even when he was in the G League last year, I thought he was really good.
Yeah.
And like showed that he's like a high level player at the G League. So I think that can translate. And so again, like I don't think you're asking a lot normally from, if you think of Grant as a big, and playing minutes at the 4, I don't know how much he'll slot up to the 5, but he can defend 5. So like maybe I just don't think there's going to be a huge need except for those rest nights for Luke to hang in there. And maybe those are just nights where Tatum's got to play more at the 4 or the 5 or whatever you got to do. You have a lot of versatility with the depth that you have on the other side. But yeah, like now we can transition to the 2 guys.
No, Luke deserved it. I mean, I think out of anyone on this list, he's probably gonna be most relevant, outside of Hauser for like when things get going here during the season. But Kevin Gelly makes sense based on Summer League. JD Davidson, I mean, I guess both of them make sense based on those are the 2 best looking players in Summer League when at the end of the 2 weeks. And so I guess my one question to you is, A, is there any way either of those guys get on the 15-man roster, do you feel like, if they have a really strong camp? And B, who do you like to actually make a potential impact when they do get a shot?
So, I put the little disclaimer with Davis, and part of the reason I put him up so high is because he's going to be here. He's on a 2-way. The rest of the guys below him, there's just no guarantee.
Right.
And so I think that I just had to kind of boost him up there. I don't think I'd be surprised if he hits 300 minutes on this team because there's just way too much guard depth. I don't know where Peyton Pritchard's minutes are coming from. So I definitely don't know where JD Davison would spend, but I know he's going to spend a bunch of time in Maine and he's going to get all the reps that he needs after only 1 season at Alabama. But I do think he showed enough at camp or Summer League to be a little bit bullish on what he could do. There would be a little bit of a tax savings if they made him one of the 13th or 14th guys. So I could see that being a curiosity if no one else sort of blows you away below the invites. But with both him and Cabangeli, the problem is none of the guys you brought to camp really check the 2-way boxes, right? You have to have 4 years or less of experience. And I think almost all these guys are past that. So I don't see necessarily an obvious funnel. Now, maybe another team waives a guy and no one blows you away in camp. And you're like, okay, we're going to put this guy on a 2-way and Cabangeli elevates to the parent roster. But again, some of that will depend on how he plays in camp. I think, I keep hearing Clint Capella type player, can run the floor. There's some hype videos out there of him hitting 3s over the summer. I think if they're being honest, they'd go to him and say, hey, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Just run the floor.
Glass.
The Celtics certainly like all their big men to shoot. We'll see Cornette fire away with that. But a guy like that, all they want is for him to run, rebound, play above the rim a little bit. And, maybe he gives you a little something. He was definitely, I didn't know a whole lot about him going into Summer League, and I was so on the Travion Williams hype train that I lost all sight of everything else. I really wanted Travion to be here, but
Golden State go.
They just keep kicking me in the shin. But can Cabangeli be something? I think so. So. Didn't get really an opportunity with the Clippers, kind of bounced out there because they had a loaded roster and wasn't, quite the dynamic player that maybe they expected. Bounced around, was great with Rio Valley last year and maybe found himself a little bit. And so, hey, another chance to show what he can do. And at worst, if he's just a 2-way guy, you still have the luxury of keeping him around. I don't know what the number is now because the pandemic screwed everything up, but those guys can be around the team a whole bunch. And
I think it's 50 games.
Yeah. So
it's a lot.
You're going to want to put those guys up in the G League anyway for 30 games a year or whatever the main, however many that Maine can get, especially the home games. But yeah, I think it'll be a good situation for him and maybe he'll surprise. That's another part of the curiosity. Really good at Summer League, but does it always translate? No. So let's see what he can do against at least more time against real NBAers.
Yeah. I think the battle between him and Cornette for that first big spot, I think will be one of the most fascinating subplots in camp here because he's, if he plays like he did in Summer League, he might have the inside track on that. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. All right. We need to go. I'm demanding us go to the local route to wrap things up here.
I love that. I love that we have the local route. It's 2 local bodies here.
Let's go. We need it. Jake Layman let's start there. That's the newest signing this week. They made official.
I think he makes the roster.
I think, right? Like, I mean, I was kind of, it's kind of a guy you forgot about. Like, right? I was like, he was in Minnesota the last couple of years. He actually started some games in Portland before that. In my mind, if you look at his numbers, he's like a 3-point shooter that hasn't shot the three in the NBA yet. It's like the 3-point wing that it hasn't done that yet. But from talking to people, they kind of like him defensively, athletically. He brings a lot to the table at 6'8", and so I don't know. Can he do it from the hometown fans? He'll clearly have a pretty big base at the Garden on his side for these preseason games. So it's gonna be fascinating to watch.
It's so funny because it's one of the quieter off season. Like we all kind of perked up when they got Vonleh and Caboclo. I mean, right. And these guys are probably. I mean, if we go back and look and like their productivity over the last few years and their chances in the NBA, they really haven't done anything. But here's a legit guy who has been a serviceable bench guy for Minnesota and Portland, and like can help you. So obviously you look at the shooting splits and go, he can't play here, doesn't shoot three or whatever, but he does enough, like whether it's the movement and willing ball mover and cutting. And I mean, obviously the athleticism, that I do think there's a role here. But probably, we can debate what the team's biggest need is, but there's probably two camps. And one who thinks like the big man depth is the biggest issue. And another that's kind of worried about the wing, where you don't want to run Jalen and Jason into the ground. And it would be nice if you had another wing to throw out there. What did we see in the finals? They needed one more wing probably who could at least go out there. And so while Layman, it doesn't necessarily leap off the page, except he leaps off the ground and can dunk like crazy. But, I do think that's a good serviceable role player who can help your roster. So that's why I had him so high on that list, because I do think, as quiet as it was, and we kind of just looked up and go, oh, cool story, local boy coming home, chance to make the team. I think his skill set's going to give him a definitive chance to get one of those spots.
And it kind of shows you how competitive the NBA is to for roster spots right now, because he's, for a guy like that who, he hasn't done a lot in his career, but it's 5-year. He was hurt a lot in Minnesota, but he was, like you said, has been a rotation player for a good chunk of his career, and now he has to, take a non-guarantee. And that part of it might just be you're coming to Boston, you actually have an opportunity here. Like, he obviously agreed to this deal after the Gallinari injury. Right. So this is a situation where it's like, okay, yeah, no, I could certainly play myself into a role here, and I'm going to, bet on myself on that front.
And Minnesota has 9 million guys now.
Yeah, my God.
Right?
Minnesota's roster.
And 9 million bigs. And they drafted somebody I wanted, and I said, oh God, he's never going to play. So yeah, it's a tough situation.
Noah Vonleh. Another.
I'm gonna let you start on this. How you feeling about Noah Vonleh?
I thought he had a couple years ago with the Knicks. Actually, had a really good season.
He did,
but that team was so bad that how much can you take out?
I think that was 2019-19. Yeah, I don't even remember back then because it was pre-pandemic.
I know, it's true. It's that season exists. That feels like 10 years ago or anything pre-pandemic. But he's someone that it's a very high draft pick. Was traded for Batum very early in his career. Was a nice by Portland, which is way back when. But really just was a guy who never. I don't think he rebounds well, but that's kind of it. And so that's someone who,
which is maybe all you need,
right? Which is right. Is that what you're looking for at this spot in terms of But for me, to work, you can't just rebound this. You need to actually, I think, be respectable defensively. And so I think that's going to be the question for him now is can he do that? And the fact that he's been out of the league now for a year, he obviously is going to be hungry for it. All these guys are kind of in that mode. I kind of like Brad Stevens' style of getting guys like this, because it's you have seasoned guys, but also guys that are going to be, hungry as ever. So I think that's hopefully a mix of where guys learn to play their role more, or just not step out of their lane. And Vonleh could be, if he embraces that and can play defense in the system, he could kind of fall in line with that. And
just like you said with Jake Layman, the behavioral connection or whatever, wherever he was up from there, the old Merrimack Valley Conference, I covered those games back in the day. But yeah, he's clearly someone who has NBA experience, who hasn't quite ever tapped into that full potential. I do sometimes get a little leery when I see that he went and, Shanghai, big men tend to go over there and dominate. I keep thinking back to Shavlik Randolph days, and like he would go over there, he would put up 20 and 20, and then he would come back and, get a 10-day or fill out the Celtics roster at the end there. But there's only so much you can show in that setting. And, look, he's going to have to shake some rust. I forget if it was him or someone else I wrote in there, but, I don't think he's played double-digit minutes in a game since like before the bubble. And like that concerns me. Like they just haven't had any reps except overseas. And so we'll see. But again, no shortage of motivation. I'm sure, like especially for a local guy, like the front office is familiar with these guys, and you're just hoping that being put in the right situation with a lot of positives and not being asked to do a lot can get the most out of you. So whether it's him or any of these other dudes that sort of get some inspiration and find what they haven't been able to find quite in the NBA to this point.
It'll be fascinating to see if, when they're picking out who makes this team here, like if they go, like let's say, Cornette feels pretty safe. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be, and, Hauser's going to be on there. So that's 12. So you have 3 spots there. Do they go 2 wings, 1 big? Do they go 2 bigs, 1 wing? Like you'll kind of see because that's going to have and honestly, that probably it's going to be up in there based on like who's earned a spot, like who actually is playing well enough to be like, okay, you could be relevant here. And then there's obviously the, keep the roster spot open option. But I feel like that's, especially if these guys are on non-guaranteed deals, that's less appealing now because Gallinari's out anyway. So it's like, it's not going to take much to like, need to go deeper into that bench in a couple of these games if other injuries strike early. And
just like you said, I could see that scenario where they maybe even carry another guy out and he doesn't have a guaranteed date till, obviously most of these contracts don't go till January anyway. And, maybe it's just a luxury to have a body like that. Maybe, and how early do 10 days start? Like, I mean, I guess you could wait and just.
Yeah, I think it's right around the same time, like maybe like December or January too. Even though I know of COVID now, maybe.
Right, exactly. Like COVID has changed the rules on everything. And that's why I don't have a grasp on 2 ways or 10 days anymore. But I could see like a scenario where you just kind of try to weather early, and say, it sounds funny to try and on a $170 million spend to be trying to save a couple $100,000. But, again, it all comes down to who shows in camp. If it makes sense to carry a guy because you think he's got something and can help you in a pinch, then maybe they're more likely to go to 15. The one guy we haven't talked about that I think probably would be my pick for spot number 2 after Jake Layman would be Justin Jackson.
Yep.
Obviously had the 10-day here last year. Like he wasn't even on the Celtics Summer League roster to start the year and then came in and was probably one of their best players.
He dominated.
Has size. Yeah, has size, knocks down threes. Like I feel like if you were trying to figure out what they need with those final spots, do you think they need like sort of a wing guy, which I've kind of tagged Layman as this, even though he has some size. And I think you just go a little bit bigger with Justin Jackson. You can put him in probably different scenarios at the big man spot. I'd feel comfortable if those are the 2 guys coming out, and I'm kind of waiting for the others to maybe surprise me and show a little bit more than maybe I've seen so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, if I was going to, put my odds on it early on, I'd be like, I like those 2 for their versatility. And then after that, it's going to be, who makes the biggest impression. And
everybody else can go to Maine.
Everyone's going to Maine. Right.
Yeah.
That pipeline is strong. And it's obviously they dug deep into it with like Luke Cornette last year, and whatever else opens up on this roster.
Do we? I feel bad we didn't say anything about Broderick Thomas.
Yeah, Broderick Thomas. It's just he actually had a good summer league too. I just think it's a situation where the backcourt is crowded, and and you sign JD Davison, so but who knows? Maybe if he has a really good camp and will guard up defensively, that he certainly. There's an opportunity for him there if he can take it and knock out, should I say, yeah, we're better off with him than like Layman or something like that if he proves that. But I think he has a tough hand against him to kind of, because the needs are kind of against what his size is really.
Yeah, exactly. And he's 6'5", he's a big guard, but can he play the spots that you're probably going to need that depth for? Like I just don't see a guard unseating Peyton Pritchard for fourth string minutes. And so you'd have to really be kind of erode the depth chart, but too bad. Cause he was like, a lot of those guys were good. And when you brought up at the start here, Matt Ryan, like, I think a lot of people would have loved to have seen Matt Ryan, especially given his story, be here in camp, but you only got 20 spots. And there was no clear pathway for him to kind of stick on this roster when his skill set probably overlaps a good bit with Hauser and the like, and doesn't have quite as much size either. So those are just the decisions you got to make. I hope he gets a chance somewhere to kind of keep that dream alive.
Lightning round on Bruno and Denzel Valentine. Any thoughts either way?
I mean, Bruno. Just
a Bruno quote, just a Brian Fischella.
Bruno is 2 years away from being 2 years away, and that was 8 years ago. So that's tough. And Denzel, like, he lasted on the end of last year. He's one of those dudes who's like surprisingly old, 28, 29 now or something. Again, he's going to get a chance to go back up to Maine and probably prove what he can do, or unless one of these guys just really did something this offseason that takes him to another level. It's they're kind of competing to just stay in the league.
All right. That's Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston being ahead of the curve here, giving you the power rankings you need to get you ready for training camp.
I did appreciate that you came back with the depth chart because you got it. I stepped on your territory with the power rankings, and you were like, "Let me just remind you who the power ranking / depth chart king is," and I was like, "All right, I got to stand down."
No, this is power rankings is universally stolen for the last 20, 30 years. We'll just see if that's. I'll be honest. It was just a lot of work to do it. I did it for a few years, and then doing it every week was like, this is just there's too many players. There's too many. Maybe I'll with the top 9. Like, I mean, what am I going to do? Right. What are you going to say?
It was funny. I said you can quibble with this, and some of you will. And sure enough, I got like 5 things that are like, and somebody said, "Oh, you guys love Marcus so much, you put ahead of Robert Williams." I'm like, I'm the president of the freaking Rob Williams fan club. Like, you know how hard
who are you talking to?
But you just gotta give Marcus his due there. So yeah, top 8, top 9, whatever. We know that. Like, let's end real on this because I'm interested in your take on this. What do you think ends up happening with Gallinari? Because he's sort of expressed a desire to be around the team and be a veteran presence. And would Brad be, I hate to say cold-hearted because it's just the reality is you're a championship team. Do they end up bundling him in a pick and making that tough decision? Because if you're going to add somebody that's more than just a minimum or like a disabled player veteran, which is $3.2 million, do you need to use Gallinari's contract to go get impact talent?
They'll never say this because it's just it's so brutal for Gallinari to be like after that press conference, be like, "It's my home. This is a team I've always wanted to play for," and then be like, "Yeah, you're gonna be traded before you have a chance to even suit up." But realistically, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if you need, I mean, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the team comes together. If they're running like a fine-tuned machine mid-season and Luke Cornett becomes like a better version of Daniel Tice or something like that, maybe we're like, oh, what are we going to get? It's going to cost more money to get another guy. Like, what do we need to do that for? Or we can just get someone on the buyout market. But if not, then that's certainly a trade chip that you're going to have to explore using. And that sucks. It really sucks.
It really does. But, he still gets the jersey. He still got the press conference. So, it would be terrible. But I think one of the things that championship teams have to do is be a little bit ruthless. And I don't think it's on the top of the priority list.
No.
But certainly if you get into the season and you need something, that's a little bit more than what you have the means and assets to go get. And they certainly have like traded player exceptions and stuff that they can use and the disabled player exception when that comes through. But that chip of Gallinari is valuable, especially if you wouldn't trigger his player option going to another team. So just something to keep an eye on as we go along because we have to think about these things.
It gives us extra content for the sad part is he's not playing, but it will give us
love content,
trade ideas for February.
Except Kevin Durant rumors, love all other content.
Yeah, exactly that. Except for late August content. Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston. Make sure you're checking him out on the Celtics Talk podcast and back on. Pre and post, he'll be
getting ready. Got to get up on that treadmill. Time to get moving.
Look out! Live reports from the Auerbach Center coming fast and furious. And you're probably be working double if the Patriots start the season like 0-4 or something like that. And then that content train is going to go straight to the Celtics.
Thanks for noticing.
All right, rate, review, subscribe. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you all next week.